Nigeria on the march again.
On the march again.
Looking for Mr. President.
On the march again.
Into the government of Nigeria.
Long live the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Leading up to elections, you have to understand that he was very close with the military regime at the time, and they had an understanding that they were willing to relinquish power.
And so that made me deeply suspicious.
That's the way they normally behave, the military. That was what Gowon did.
You know, because you can never be sure that because this military man is ruling now, by tomorrow he will be there again. You can't be sure.
Abacha didn't. Abacha became the most brutal military dictator we have ever seen.
Come for me.
I was born on the 16th of March, 1985. That was the same year, on the 27th of August, that Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida assumed office as military dictator for Nigeria. And that means that for the first 15 years of my life, all I knew was the military. All I knew was dictatorships. All I knew was authoritarian rule. In many speeches over the years, including a popular TED Talk, I have spoken about this as my origin story. The way that I see the world, the way that I see my country, the way that I see democracy, coups, and military rule is defined by the world I met when I was born. Babangida was both military dictator and a self-styled president, head of state. I witnessed this man who, when he took over office and overthrew Muhammadu Buhari, was well-liked, well-loved, highly connected in the different segments of Nigerian society, loved by politicians, adored by business people, charmed the international community, popular across the continent even. And he promised that he was going to return Nigeria to a democracy very soon. Each time he made the promise, he broke the promise. This wasn't strange.
That's the way they normally behave, the military. That was what Gowon did. He actually wanted to leave power in 1974. He now shifted it to 1970. He now moved it. Muritala and Co were very restless. They didn't want a situation of political uncertainty. So they felt, okay, let us change this man. He has spent 9 years and still he was shifting the goalpost. He was shifting transition program.
Apart from Olusegun Obasanjo, many of Nigeria's previous military dictators did not leave office willingly. Some had made it clear that they were going to perpetuate themselves in office. Others were removed before they could try it. And so I realized that you cannot trust dictators, even the ones that smile and have charming gap teeth.
But by 1993, when Iwosu became the chairman of NEC, the preparation started and everything. So everybody started having faith that, okay, this one will be like this one. However, we still had our reservations. People still believe that he was not going. The body language, that even if he wanted to go, his boys were not ready to go because they were still operating as if they had eternity. So they were not ready to go. The Akelu, the Guadabe, David Mark and Co and all of them. These were IBB boys and they were just jostling for position. They were becoming Major General, they were becoming this and they were happy. Chris Garba, all of them, they were happy. So that's why sometimes I want to believe, that he was telling the truth. Anytime he says that they would have killed him and Abiola if he had allowed the June 12th thing to stay. It's possible because those guys did not even behave as if they wanted to leave something. It was like they were waiting for Babangida to leave and then they would take over the government.
Then you see, when Asha released her first hit, Fire on the Mountain, I want chop money from my government. That is not a normal thing for people to say about their country. But if you grew up under IBB, as he was called, that was what's obtained in the country. You knew that government was not a place to go and serve your country. You knew that government was a place to go and chop money. Considering, now you would say that tradition didn't start from Babangida, and you would be right. But you have to consider the history. For much of Nigeria's rule, and even I just said rule, until that time, the military was in charge. Whatever traditions of governance we have today, the military gave them to us.
But you see, when you also look at the whole thing, sometimes you feel like, okay, maybe the only thing you need in Nigeria is now for soldiers to come and instill discipline. But you see, the fact is that even the army, the soldiers, the military men themselves are also not disciplined. Now, politics has mingled with everything. You see politics even in the administration of the forces in Nigeria.
The military didn't allow us to see what the First Republic could have become. They took over everything. They defined the way that our governance is run. Then after he declared that there were going to be elections in 1990, it didn't happen, did his constitutional conference, tried to play games, then finally held the elections on the 12th of June, 1993, the popular June 12th. Some people have called it the freest and fairest elections in Nigeria's history. Okay, now release the results. They began to play games. They began to say that there were some forces that were going to destabilize the country. They began to talk about irregularities. Even though Humphrey Nwosu, who was as they used to call them, the electoral umpire of the NEC, the National Electoral Commission, ignored court orders to release the results. Till date, IBB hasn't identified these people who stopped him from releasing those results. What exactly was going to happen to make the country burn? Not told us. So, that's how the military does. Just cancel an election. Just cancel an election. Just cancel an election. And so that made me deeply suspicious.
The June 12th is still recorded as the freest and the fairest election that we have had in Nigeria. And it was so transparent. It was clear. Everybody was happy. The election, the results were not contested. The result, and that's why everybody was enraged when he annulled the election. Because everybody was saying, look, when can we have this kind of free and fair election again in Nigeria? It affected me personally. How? I was in Northern Barracks, and I was to write a documentary for Babangida. We had a consular person in New York. So they have packaged everything. My friend who died recently, Demola Seriki, who was the ambassador to Spain, he got the contract with Makinde, So we wanted to do a documentary on him. It will have promoted, it will have been fantastic for him. Because the way I wanted to do it, the way we planned everything, we were just waiting. I've collected the American visa. We were just waiting for the election, to cover the election. I got the American visa June 3rd. So we were waiting to cover the election because it was going to be part of the documentary. So that was what we planned for him. That was what he planned for himself because he contracted us. You understand? He gave us a contract. So it was so nasty, so sad that with the kind of image or with the kind of promotion we wanted to do for him through the documentary, he had paid some amount. At that time, 1993, I was just to collect $10,000. 1993, you can imagine $10,000 to write the documentary. So everything had been done. So that was what gave me the impression that, look, this thing is a non-deal. This election, nothing will happen to it. A perfect election, he took the record away from Nwosu. He took the shine away from himself. And then he ruined his whole future as a personality.
Suddenly, he left because his colleagues in the military apparently were uncomfortable with him perpetuating himself in office. 10 years. Almost 10 years, IBB was in office. One of the longest serving Nigerian presidents. And we didn't vote for him. When he left, he still didn't hand over to the winner of the election. Handed over to the interim government led by Ernest Shonekan, who just passed a few months ago. The Chief of Defense Staff, Sani Abacha, who had been involved in much of the coups up until that time, was essentially running the government. And Shonekan, after wasting his time, was booted out of office, declared that he couldn't continue running the country and left. Even the interim national government was a strange creature known to Nigerian law, even the law that IBB forced on us. Then Abacha took over and gave that his big speech about how hospitals had become consulting clinics. It's interesting to note that even Abiola, who was the winner of the election and possibly the most consequential Nigerian politician ever, was happy that Abacha was coming into office.
Leading up to elections, you have to understand that he was very close with the military regime at the time, and they had an understanding that they were willing to relinquish power. So he didn't have any reason not to believe them. And some people might say he might have been gullible, but I don't think it was gullible. He just believed that any Nigerian, military or not, would want the best for the country.
Now, Abacha comes into office. Everybody thinks like Abacha. People call the late Gani Fawahimi one of the greatest Nigerian activists ever. Was one of those that called for Abacha to take over because they all thought that Abacha was going to restore Nigeria to a democracy. Abacha didn't. Abacha became the most brutal military dictator we have ever seen till date. About the last one. And killed more people, allegedly, or confirmed by certain courts, and the famous National Human Rights Panel, Oputa panel.
Exhibit 1. Asmela, please.
Abacha came in, give us democracy. He began to dance Galala. MKO, at some point, realized that this man has no intentions to leave. MKO began to go abroad, talking to the players, Jesse Jackson, if I remember correctly, in America, they're trying to figure out how to let this man give him his mandate. And people died for June 12th.
I was 13 years old when the election was annulled. And, being a teenager, was supposed to be in school. We had to come back from school. And then there were killings on the streets, not on our street, but at least, you'll be hearing all manner of things on TV, no petrol, no kerosene. That's the time we learned how to cook with sawdust. All manner of things were happening.
So, civil unrest, banks were closed down. I remember that's the first time I saw people putting, palm fronds in front of their cars, so that rioters will not attack them, all of that. In between, IBB had handed over on the 26th of August to the interim national government. Shonekan sets another date for election for February 1994. November 1993, a court said Shonekan's government, was illegal. Sure, see, I in trouble. This is the chaos that IBB left us in, lest we forget. November 17, 1993, Abacha dispatches Shonekan. comes in, popular with everybody. They think he's going to give us a democracy. By that time, Abiola had returned to Nigeria. So he thinks, okay. Some people say Abiola knew what was going to happen with Abacha, so that's why he came back, so I can collect his mandate now. No mandate. Went around Nigeria, back and forth, etc. In that time, Abacha dissolves the National Assembly, dissolves state governments, dissolves local government. Abacha was badass. Mobutu Sese Seko in the making.
The interim national government is hereby dissolved. The national and state assemblies are also dissolved. The state executive councils are dissolved. The brigade commanders are to take over from the governors in their states until administrators are appointed.
There was tension. My father was obviously distraught. He had hoped that his friends in the United States and the West, who proclaimed democracy was the best thing after sliced bread, were going to come to his aid, and he wasn't receiving that support. My father wasn't only looking to be president of Nigeria. He had instrumentally put presidents into office in different African countries. He was instrumental in getting Museveni in office in Uganda. He was instrumental in the ACN's fight for independence and then getting Mandela into office. So he basically knew, and he had a plan and a vision for the whole continent, not necessarily only Nigeria.
Anyway, let's dial back. So Abacha takes over office, November, gives his big speech, gives Nigerians hope. There was some celebration, we must not forget. But then he refuses to leave. June 11, 1994, Abiola decides that enough is enough. And he does what is now known as the famous the Ekpetedo Declaration in Lagos Island. The building is still there. Now run down, but still there. To declare himself as the duly and democratically elected president of Nigeria. It was a big deal. Constitutional crisis. There's chaos in Nigeria, chaos. You people don't even know the peaceful transfer of government that we have now. Many millennials forget, and many Gen Z don't even understand. This is just to hand over from one government to another. Chaos. Look at what I just outlined.
Chose me as their president. Didn't they?
So he now did the declaration. It was that declaration that now caused the confrontation between him and Abacha, and that was why he was arrested. Yes.
He did that in a historic speech titled Enough is Enough. Incidentally, when I led my first protest, which at the time some people called historic, in 2010, went to National Assembly, forced ourselves inside National Assembly with my friends, Benga Sheson, Audu Mekori, Omotola Jaladi Ekende. We had some of our elders, Dile Momodu join us. I think in Lagos, Dominic joined us. There was Omawumi Megbele. There was M.I. Abaga. We went to National Assembly and caused some trouble. We call that protest Enough is Enough, directly inspired by the Enough is Enough speech by MKO Abiola. Now you have to understand, think of Abiola like you think of Dangote. Imagine that Dangote or Femi Falana ran for president. So this is somebody who is living the soft life, enjoying money, billionaire. One of the biggest billionaires in the country, owned a chain of businesses. One of the most popular newspapers in the country, filling station, football clubs. MK was the ultimate Jai, colorful politician, incredibly generous, multiple wives, all of them stars in different ways. Donya Abiola, first female editor in the country. His first wife, Simbiat Abiola, Kudirat Abiola, Teju Abiola, Abiola. Imagine a Jai. Imagine if Dangote said doesn't know how to, it doesn't look like he enjoys life. Think of Femi Falana. Femi Falana wins the presidency. Yeah? And then Femi Falana now decides that his mandate is stolen. Enough is enough, and goes and declares himself president in front of one of the toughest dictators. Because remember, Abacha had been in every coup over the past 2 decades.
But you see, that period was horrible. And so what changed? What I saw was the evil of power that is unchecked. Power that has no recourse to accountability, to anyone power that you could just do whatever you feel that's what you want to do. And of course, it's instability also. Because you can never be sure that because this military man is ruling now, by tomorrow he will be there again. You can't be sure. So military rule has never been, neither will it ever be, the best form of government. It's not that things have changed much, but it's far better than military rule. Yeah.
June 2022, 1994, Abiola is arrested at home in his house while he was giving an interview to the BBC. Action film, yeah? Any chaos you see in Nigeria today, nothing is similar to the chaos we endured under Sani Abacha. Nothing. Businesses were shut down. Our economy was shut down. Countries refused us to travel. Forget what we are dealing with Dubai. Multiple countries. Look, we can be saying all these things about Obasanjo was a dictator and Jonathan was this and Buhari was this. This was a full-fledged dictatorship. I remember it because as a child, we used to tell ourselves, don't say that in case the government will not kill you. We were afraid to speak under Abacha. There was palpable fear in the country. Businesses were folding up. Currency was dropping. The worst precipitation of our currency up until recently, over the past 3 years, was Babangida and Abacha. The economy was closed. The IMF, World Bank was demolishing our economy, putting sanctions everywhere. At some point, Abacha never left the country because there was nowhere to go. He had no friends, save for Mahmoud Gaddafi.